Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Are you ready to get down with some D&D? I know I am. I am joined, as I am always joined, by the maternal. Are you maternal? Mature. I mean, you are mature. And melted. Oh, maybe not so much today. Mad Wizard Merwin. What's up, Sean?
I can be any of those three for 99 cents an hour.
Well then,
Yes.
moving on from that bit of ridiculousness, let's get right into announcements because that's what we're gonna talk about D&D today. So tell me about Baldur's Gate. It's about to come out, the Descent into Avernus.
Yes. Seeing that we are recording this show 3 days before it releases, it will be out by the time you're listening to this. So you can go to Amazon, you can go to your favorite local game store, you can go to anywhere that sells fine Dungeons and Dragons products and buy the newest book, Baldur's Gate: Descent into Avernus.
Sean, I think I'm just gonna buy mine on D&D Beyond.
That is a good way to do it as well. That is how I'm buying most of my books these days.
I mean, I can't get enough of D&D on it, but there's a bunch of reviews that are starting to pop up here and there. I saw the new BDM posting some things up on Twitter and such.
Yeah, the reviews that I have seen so far are all very positive about not just the adventure, but all of the stuff in the book as well as all the peripherals that are going with it, like the dice and miscellany product that has a set of dice that go along with this adventure, plus like cards and dice bags, and it's a whole thing, Chris. It's a whole thing.
It is a whole thing. I saw some of the pictures too. They look really cool. Like a lot of the stuff looks cool. I like the maps. I kind of like all the look of the whole thing.
Yep. One of the things I will say about the book is that even though it takes on some pretty tough gaming, pretty tough stuff to run for DMs, it specifically tries to help new DMs get a feel for what they're running. So even if you are a new DM, I think this product would be good, even though normally running extra planar content is tough. I think it does a pretty good job of helping you along the way.
I mean, maybe we could take our adventure design series, the ideas from there, and see if it actually does a lot of that stuff in Descent into Avernus at some point.
Yeah, that would be great. Give us a couple of weeks to get through some other stuff, and maybe we could certainly do that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the cover revealed for Eberron Rising from the Last War. The real cover, not the fake cover that looked very strange.
Yeah. It's, again, before the show we were talking about gamers in general and human beings specifically. And, so when the book was first announced and it started showing up on certain websites that would be selling it, they had a placeholder cover, but they didn't say it was a placeholder cover. So there was a pretty significant freak out, as only gamers can, about the cover.
Look, I thought it was a bad cover, and I thought it was the real cover.
Yeah, I thought it was a cover, just like any other cover. And so I was like, okay, great. Opinions and stuff.
Yeah, the new cover's way better, by the way, everybody.
And so now they actually have the cover up. If you go to, say, Amazon, or if you go to the Wizards website to look at the preview of the book, you can see that the new cover has a Warforged wizard, as well as a halfling, a Talenta Plains halfling, wielding a boomerang, I believe, as well as a dinosaur.
Can I say why I like this cover so much?
Sure.
In most of the other depictions of Warforged that we've gotten, they're often shown as being very large and bulky and very much in the realm of like war machines. Mm-hmm. And this is a very thin Warforged that is not bulky, and it's kind of spindly, and it shows that there can be different Warforged.
It's true. But you are absolutely correct. A lot of times they've got the blades for their arms, and they're all hulked out, and they've got spikes growing out of them, and it's nice to see that there isn't just this one type of Warforged, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I also really like the Talenta Plains Halfling on the cover too. That's really good.
Yep. Good art tells a story, right? And so
that's my point. The
Right.
first cover, the placeholder cover, didn't tell anything about anything. It didn't look very Eberron at all.
Okay.
So, I mean, also that I didn't get the thing with the thing on the shoulder, the little animal on the shoulder. I didn't know what that was. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard of that thing in Eberron.
Oh, it's an expeditious messenger.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, it's the little constructs that you can make, that Mage Rights can make. They can make the Iron Defenders. They can make the Expeditious Messenger, I think it's called.
I'm glad that you got that. As you can tell, I didn't get it at all.
I've done a lot of work in Eberron over the years, so I guess it just comes second nature. I don't know.
Okay, let's move on. I
wanted to say one more thing about Eberron.
Sure.
Is that the book comes out the 19th of November. But if you are going to be at Gamehole Con 3 weeks before that release, we will be previewing the Adventurers League Eberron Oracle of War campaign. So you may get to see some of the things from the book a little bit early.
Ooh. We had a question in our forums, or a comment in our forums about, by the way, misdirected Mark, forums.misdirectedmark.com.
Yep.
About whether there was going to be just an AL Eberron campaign and why they just went with a AL Eberron campaign. And there's both. There's a Forgotten Realms AL campaign and an AL campaign for Eberron.
And Eberron, right.
Yeah.
They're going to be two separate things. They do not cross. They're going to be very different in terms of the style of play that they promote. But you will have your chance to play official, organized play Eberron Adventures.
Very neat. All right. Let's move on to the D&D Essentials Kit.
Yes. I just wanted to... I think we may have mentioned this before, but I think it bears repeating that, a couple weeks ago, the D&D Essentials Kit was not available worldwide. It was only available at Target since, I believe, June. But as of a couple weeks ago, you can now buy it anywhere. So again, you can go to Amazon, you can go to your local game store, wherever you get your stuff. The Essentials Kit should be there. And the adventure in the Essentials Kit, called Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, I think is a really, really good intro adventure. People said Lost Mines of Phandelver was a good intro adventure, and it's okay. It's it's decent. But I think Dragon of Ice Spire Peak is even better. I think it's much easier for new DMs to run Dragon of Ice Spire Peak than it was Lost Mines of Phandelver, because of the way the adventure's set up and the way it explains to you as a new DM, the best ways to run it. It also uses the sidekick system that we reviewed a version of it from Unearthed Arcana a few months ago. It uses that. So if you have fewer than a normal amount of players, you can use the sidekick system to bulk up the party, and it also includes a way to play one-on-one adventures. So one player, one DM, and the adventure scales to allow you to do that with very few hiccups. And since that adventure takes you to level 6. D&D Beyond and other online game sites, I think like Roll20 might have it and Fantasy Grounds might have it as well. There are 3 adventures that follow up on Dragon of Ice Spire Peak. They're called Stormlord's Wrath, Sleeping Dragon's Wake, and Divine Contention. Stormlord's Wrath starts you at level 7, so right after the adventure Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, you could go right into that. I think that goes 7 to 9. Sleeping Dragon's Wake might go from like 9 to 11, and then Divine Contention like 12 to 14. Something in those areas. I don't have it right in front of me. But in these 3 adventures, they're all linked, and so it's kind of the second part, if you will, of this storyline, where and in these 3 linked adventures, you can help rebuild the town of Leland as it deals with both natural and supernatural threats. So if you want to just run it as a straight, adventure where the characters are just off doing quests, you can play it that way. But if you want them to become involved in the rebuilding of this town, it's a great way to use like downtime to have them do things other than adventure as this town is being built, so they can get involved in the creation of the town.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So it's out there. It's all there for you if you are interested. I know it's for sure it's up on D&D Beyond, so you can see those 3 adventures there. And if you bought the D&D Essentials kit, there is a code in it that you can go to D&D Beyond and get the online version of it, I think for free, as well as those 3 adventures. So it's just extra content waiting there if you have those codes from the D&D Essentials kit.
Very nice.
Yep.
All right. I guess we should move on to our main topic then for the day, which is Part 4 of Acquisitions Incorporated. We're going to talk about player options. We're going to cover the backgrounds, playing with class, the Verdam, which is a new race, and the spells, and a little bit about the factions and rivals. It'll be what we talk about.
Yep.
So let's talk about the backgrounds real quick. We're not going to get too deep into them. There's 5 of them.
Yep.
There's the celebrity, adventurer's scion. There's a failed merchant. There's a gambler. There's a plaintiff, and there's a rival intern. They're all pretty much the same in sort of like their format, but they have a lot of flavor. They look like backgrounds, right, Sean?
Yes, they are definitely backgrounds.
Yeah. Now, these backgrounds, they're a little different from what you would consider normal backgrounds, because I feel like the idea is that somewhere along the way, something went wrong with each of these people.
Yeah, when we were creating these, it came to my mind that the adventuring life isn't one that you take on if you're a well-adjusted, normal person. You're off killing things. You are throwing yourself into danger, and that's not something that a normal, rational person does. And some of the best characters in whatever sort of fiction you're into, be it novels or movies or television or comics or whatever, there's something in the background that is motivating that character. And so that's why I thought, these are good for, as you said, what went wrong that pushed you in the direction that you're heading.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's exactly how they're all written, right?
Yep.
Let's just talk about some of the abilities that you give them, because those are the things that people really care about, because the backgrounds are pretty fun, right? Like the celebrity adventurer scion. It's hilarious, right? You are the son of a famous adventurer, or the daughter of a famous adventurer, or whatever gender term you would like to use for a famous adventurer.
Yep.
The scion of a famous adventurer. The tool proficiency caught me, because you get a disguise. You're proficient with a disguise kit, so you can disguise yourself.
Right. If you're famous and you're walking around, you may not want to be known, so you put on your disguise.
And then name dropping, like people know you because of your last name.
Yep.
Like you just be like, hey, my parent was this person.
Right. And then they want to hear stories, right? They want to know, so they'll do something for you. Hey, come in. Here's a drink. Here's a meal. Tell me about your famous parent.
Mm-hmm. And you get a little something for that. Like you get a little. You can use it for inspiration too if you want, as dungeon masters out there. But like you get that hospitality or whatever little bit you were looking for was. Yep. The failed merchant. There's a supply chain. Like you have connections. Like you were a merchant, you failed at being a merchant, and because even though you failed, you still have all those connections that you made while you were a merchant. So that supply chain means you know people also, just in a different way.
Yep.
The gambler. I feel like this is the one that isn't as much of a background as much as it is a way of life. Like you are a gambler. Like you just take risky chances for the most part.
Yeah, I think what we were going for is more of it wasn't. It was not just that you're a risk taker, but this is how you made your living.
Yeah.
But you may not have been great at it.
Except you do get Never Tell Me the Odds, which is what odds or games of chance are the best ones to play.
Right. I mean, the best gamblers know how to figure the odds in their head. And then, so that's like the intelligence part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they're also wise enough to play those odds, and as opposed to doing silly things that go against the odds.
Yeah. To me, this is by far the most Han Solo background that's ever been invented.
Yep.
Let's talk about the plaintiff. I like this one a lot. A lot for this book. You were wronged by Acquisitions Incorporated, but instead of getting money out of them or whatever, they offered you a job.
Yeah. This is Acquisitions Incorporated all the way. Oh, we're guilty of something? Well, I'll tell you what, you drop your claim, and have we got a deal for you? How would you love to throw fire?
Right?
Yeah.
The ability that you get is legalese, which is you can use legal talk to intimidate people or to get special favors. Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't always work. But,
Right.
When it does work, it's very useful.
Yep.
By the way, a lot of these abilities are great that way because they give you something, but there's always a caveat where where it just won't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a lot of it's game master dependent, dungeon master dependent.
Right. Yeah, and I think that tone is one that we used because a lot of these backgrounds are exactly like that, right? The criminal, probably one of the most used backgrounds in D&D. It's you have a criminal contact, and that criminal contact may come in handy or may not. It's up to you, and it's up to the DM.
Actually, they're supposed to always be useful when you use them. It actually says it right in the rules. It's one of the ones that always annoys me when people don't use it that way, because I'm like, but I took it because of that reason.
Right, but there's an implied caveat with all of them that the DM has to create that connection, or you have to work with the DM to create that connection. And to just say as a player, we're going to be fighting a pit fiend. I certainly have a criminal contact who knows all of the weaknesses of a pit fiend. Now that's a huge step.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
And that's the thing. It says it will always be useful, but then a player can mean different things to different people.
That's true. I'm always relying on the idea of narrative positioning in games because if the narrative doesn't make sense, then it doesn't matter. And these are all narrative games. So as soon as you destroy the narrative in a way that doesn't make sense, then I guess it's a difference between the way that I think about games and the way that other people think about games, because they should only be useful in criminal enterprise. But they shouldn't be but it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go to my criminal contract and they instantly betray me.
No, right, exactly. It's just like you're saying, right? It needs to fit the situation, and it needs to work in a way that everyone agrees that makes sense in terms of the narrative. And so that's why, we put all of that into these features for these backgrounds. So for legalese, it's with common folks who don't know any better, you might be able to intimidate or deceive them to get favors or special treatment by, throwing out legal jargon. Mm-hmm. And that's how it should be, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what you're trying to get, you might be able to.
Yeah, and that's the wording that makes these work so much better, in my opinion, than some of the earlier backgrounds.
Yeah. And there's also, that's where you can get a comedic effect out of it.
Yep, that too.
Right? Because you think it's going to be X, and if it works out that you can still get it, but in a different way, it becomes, Y, but you're still getting what you want, and then there's comedy as an outcome as well.
Mm-hmm. The last one's a really good story one. It's a rival intern. So, you used to work for somebody else, but you liked the way that AI did things better and joined up with them instead. So you've already been in this business, probably working for Dran Enterprises or whatever other company you have that exists in this world, right? or your world, and you have the ability of inside informant, which is like you have connections with your previous employers, so you know stuff about them.
Right. And like you said, it works best if it's Drawn Enterprises or some other entity within Acquisitions Incorporated, but it could just as easily be you used to work for one of the Mass Lords of Waterdeep. You know, you used to work for the Zentarum.
Yes.
It can be any of those organizations. And if for some reason you run an Acquisitions Incorporated game in Eberron, it could be one of the Dragonmarked houses that you used to work for.
In fact, if you want to run a less comedic version of this game, you can put it in Eberron. It will work really well because there's lots and lots of factions in Eberron and lots of places to put this stuff.
Sure. So yeah, it's just another way of adding a little drama to it, adding a way to get additional information to deepen the story. All of that is implicit within just this one background.
Mm-hmm. And when I say lots and lots of factions in Eberron, I mean a lot of them are very much based on the idea of business.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, let's talk about classes, playing with class. We're not going to talk about all the different classes that get played with. We're gonna talk about what this section does in general, and then we're going to use one of them as an example. Mm-hmm. So this whole idea is that it will give the classes and how to fit them into an AI campaign structure.
Yep. I want to add one thing before we start with this.
Sure.
And I'm under NDA, so I can't talk about a lot of things that went on. But one thing that was revealed publicly, so I can comment on, was that we did create subclasses for the book, but that was when we thought we were going to be kickstarting the book. Once Wizards became involved with all of the playtesting that needs to be involved with subclasses and the timeline that we were working with to get the book published, there was no way we could have playtested the subclasses that we'd created. So those were cut, and this was the next best thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, are those subclasses some of the subclasses now that you can say ones we're seeing in these UA articles?
No, nothing
Okay.
like that. Nothing like that.
All right. And not that you could tell me anyway.
Right.
But you can deny it, so there you go. Apparently. All right, so the idea is that each section has a bit of an overview of the class in the AI world. There's often a neat detail that you can add in that is just flavor, and then some ideas for how the different subclasses can be reskinned or reflavored to fit an AI game. Does that sound about right?
That sounds exactly right.
You want to talk about, is it okay if we talk about the barbarian?
Sure. Go
All
for
right.
it.
So the barbarian's idea in an AI campaign is they are a violent message sender. They're like the knee breakers that you get for the mob.
Mm-hmm.
That is their role as far as AI insinuates.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. To that, they have a signature item. It's like a calling card. For example, like you go and you beat somebody down, and you want to make sure that it's known that you were the one that did it. You leave a carved ivory die with an eye instead of a pip on the one face, just lying there. That's like your calling card. It could be other things too, like a fedora that has like part of the brim split, something like that. You can make stuff up, but there's a list also that you can just roll on or choose from. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, it talks about how some of the subclasses fit in. So, like the Path of the Ancestral Guardian. You can commune with the execs and corporate raiders who came before you. So your Ancestral Guardian is, somebody that was in the business before you were.
Right.
For example, like a grumpy dwarf carriage driver named Bolt. So when you summon your Ancestral Guardian, it's a grumpy dwarf carriage driver named Bolt.
Right. Yeah. In the actual official version of the Path of the Ancestral Guardian, right? It's your ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
It's people from the past who are now spirits who come to you and offer you assistance, whether it be actual physical assistance in the real world or like advice. So it's not too hard a sell to say, well, if you're in Acquisitions Incorporated, you've got the business spirits behind you.
Mm-hmm.
People who have gone before you, and they just haven't been able to leave this world. Their spirits, they're just hanging around, and I all I can think of when I think of this is like people who have retired, and they all meet at like the coffee shop in the middle of town, and they just sit and they gossip about the old days or what's going wrong now. That's how I see this, right? you've got all of these people from the past sipping coffee, swirling around you, telling you how to do things.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. Like it's very flavorful. It fits right into the AI thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all the rest of them pretty much fit that structure. So I don't think we need to talk about any of the other ones. Like you can just go get the book and read them all. They're all kind of like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the new race, the Verdan. So the Verdan, they were goblins, right, originally?
Yes.
And they were created by an entropic force, the thing that will be there at the end and be there at the beginning. What's it called?
That which endures.
Yeah, that which endures. So they mutate as they age. That's kind of the theme for them, and they just that's what their shtick is. Although when we talk about this a little bit, there's a telepathic thing that goes on here that I didn't quite get from the flavor. So I will be asking you about that, Shawn, if you could touch on that.
Sure.
One of the things that I read that I thought was really cool, and these are the things that I like in books like this, there's like a sidebar that's called Underlying Improvements. So it says, this is me quoting it, when a Verdan character gains an ability score improvement at certain levels, that increase can be tied to a physical mutation at the player's determination. A boost to strength might be accompanied by a growth spurt and the development of rippling muscle, while an increase in intelligence might produce a stylishly large forehead. Right. So these are the things that I love in books. I mean, I think it helps the books and the ideas within stand apart a little bit and ties into the idea of what is the story behind the mechanism.
Right. Yeah. It's just a way to explain in world why every 4 levels you are getting more charismatic or more dexterous. And it's funny because I see people, we're talking about people on the internet. I see people all the time saying, for a mechanical thing, well, how is that part of the world? How is that something that is real in the world as opposed to just in the mechanic? But this ability score increase is something where I never see them say that.
Mm-hmm. It's the thing that I always ask is how does a mechanic tie into the story of the fiction?
Right. So that is just a way to make these guys a little more guys. They're goblins. Make them a little more real in this world.
All right, let's talk about some of the traits. We won't talk about all of them because some of them are pretty basic. But so the ability score increase. Your Constitution score increases by 1 and your Charisma score increases by 2. This makes perfect sense to me because in the Verdan section, it talks about how the Verdan are they're cultural chameleons. They because they don't have their own culture really in a lot of ways. They just sort of adopt other cultures.
Yep. Just to step back for a second, the backstory of these goblins is they were a tribe, a large tribe that were underground, and they moved into an area that was being renovated, is the wrong word, but it was being changed by this powerful being of entropy. So when they changed, they lost all, not only of their own memories, but kind of their cultural subconscious. So they couldn't remember anything, who they were, where they were, what brought them here, or anything. So when they came out of the Underdark into the world, they were very curious, and they rather than being afraid of everything, they kind of grasped onto whatever they encountered as their own for a while. Mm-hmm. So this charisma is very much an openness to new ideas and new things, and acceptance of others and their culture.
And their constitution is because they were affected by that which endures.
Right. They became hardier in that transition.
To go with that constitution, they have a thing called black blood healing. So they have black blood. It's that sign of their connection to that which endures, which boosts their natural healing. So when you roll a 1 or a 2 on any hit die that you spend at the end of a short rest, you can re-roll the die, but you have to use the new roll. Right. And I think that's a really good mechanism to indicate that they are tougher.
Yep. For some reason, the people that I play with, when they roll hit dice, it's always a 1 or a 2, right? And then you get to, now I got to use another one, or unless you're first level, then that's all you get. So for some reason, to me, that seems like a valuable thing, especially at lower levels. It's less valuable if you run adventures where, after a couple of encounters, you're always taking a long rest. But if you run any sort of longer string of encounters where short rests come in handy and hit dice are valuable, then this becomes an even more valuable ability.
Absolutely. Before we get to the telepathy stuff and the telepathic, there's limited telepathy and telepathic insight. But before we get to those, I want to talk about persuasive, because you're persuasive. You have proficiency in the persuasion skill because of your lack of history that Shawn mentioned before. It makes you, as Shawn said, since you're so curious, it makes you trustworthy and also a little humble because you don't really know anything about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the curiosity, right? It's the acceptance that gives you a bit of a better feel for people.
Yeah, I also think that the adoption of other people's cultures so readily also makes you pretty trustworthy in a lot of ways. Because I feel like it's these creatures, the Verdan, they don't fake it; they just get it.
Right. Yep.
Let's talk about this telepathy thing. This is the part that I don't understand, because I didn't really grasp anything from the background that talked about telepathy. So they have limited telepathy where they can telepathically speak to any creature they can see within 30 feet. They don't have to share a language, but they have to be able to understand at least one language. Right. And this communication is neat because it's slow and limited. And really all you can do is transmit simple ideas and straightforward concepts. So there's no like long drawn out philosophical conversations going on here.
Right. It's the mutation from this being that causes it, in terms of flavor. And the reason I like this is because it's not overpowered, but it helps move games along. Mm-hmm. One of the things, especially at the lowest levels, that causes games to not work well sometimes is the inability to understand a creature. Because, part of the fun of gaming for me is, that role-playing, that being in a situation that's different and seeing what happens. And if you cut that ability right away by not letting someone communicate, it eliminates a fun part of the game sometimes.
Yeah, it also eliminates options.
Right, exactly. So this not only does that, it goes with this idea of, being in tune with someone because of your own negated capability. Mm-hmm. Right? You lose this, but you gain this. And it also, since it's slow and since it's limited, it gives you an option to have some comedy, right? It gives you the ability to miscommunicate a bit, or to have it go a little bit wrong in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why it's there.
I don't have a problem with the telepathy. I just don't understand why there's two telepathic abilities. I mean, I guess you just use one for you grab one for since you started with one, but I figured they would all just be different because of the mutations. But the telepathic insight, your mind's connection to the world around you strengthens your will, so you have advantage on all wisdom and charisma saving throws. Yeah, I get it. I get it because it's tied, and I think it's a perfectly fine ability. I also like the limited telepathy as an ability. I just wasn't sure why it was there.
Yep. Yeah, well, the insight is just regular insight, but the insight comes from having this connection with other people. Mm-hmm. So, if they're trying to affect your mind, you understand that better because you are connected to theirs.
Sure.
And that's where the wisdom and charisma saving throw bonuses come in.
Okay, let's talk about spells real quick, because there's a list of spells that are very AI. Mm-hmm. We won't spend too much time on them. So distort value. This is a very AI spell. It's you double or halve the perceived value of an item. I think that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Fast friends. I actually like this spell quite a bit for how it's phrased. Mm-hmm. So the fast friends spell, you can charm somebody, and it's not a first level spell. It's a higher level spell. I forget if it's second.
Third level.
It's third level.
Yep.
It's concentration. They will do things that you ask them to do. So it's actually the spell that we always think the charm actually is, right?
Right.
But if they are going to do something that is dangerous or against their values, they get a saving throw. But they will still, they get that next saving throw, but they'll still do it. So they'll do things that you ask them to do as long as you ask them to do it in a friendly way.
Right. I mean, it's exactly what you said, Chris. We were thinking, here's how charm person is supposed to work according to the rules. Here, and then let's make one that's a little higher level that actually works how people use it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make it how people use it. Boom,
Yeah.
there it is.
It's really good.
Yeah.
The Gift of Gab. This is interesting and highly situational. I imagine it was made because of Jim Dark Magic.
Or any funny
Yeah.
player. Right.
I'm not sure who would ever take this and memorize it because it's a first level spell, I think, or maybe a second.
It's a second level spell.
Second level spell.
Yeah.
Because what you can do is you can use it as a reaction, and then you can basically erase the memories of everyone around you from what you said for the last 6 seconds and replace them with whatever the verbal components of the spell were.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I don't understand when I would use this spell other than it being just sitting there.
Well, I have played countless games where we're role playing. I, as the DM, will say something, and then the player will say something funny or inappropriate, but then after they say it, I start to react, and they're like, no, that was out of character. What this spell does is allow them to say that, and then say, oh, okay, that was out of character, but I'm going to cast this spell, and now I'm going to say what I really wanted to say. So it's actually a mechanic to let people do that and then pay a little price for it, mechanically.
Okay, that makes that's fine. I can imagine there's those tables that play that way that would make that actually useful.
Yeah.
So.
And again, it's just there. You don't have to use it,
yeah.
But it's there to, and then it is useful in so many ways sometimes because you can say something to see what the reaction is to it.
See, that's actually a good point right there.
Right. If you want to use it in that way, you say something, you see what they do, and then you take it back, and you've got that information, and then you can say something else.
Now that's a use of the spell that I didn't consider, and that's actually a really good idea.
Right.
So the next one, Incite Greed. I actually like this spell as a controller spell in combat, and also a negotiation spell in interactions. So you pull out a gem and you cast a spell, and it charms everyone around you, and they have to move slowly close. They're charmed, and they will move safely towards the gem. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, it's a 3rd level spell.
Yes.
And I think it's because of that flexibility that I noted. I mean, you would know better than me.
Yep. No, I mean, you can do it. You can use it, as you say, mechanically in this way, right? You want a creature to be charmed and to move closer to you, or just hold still and stare at the gem. If they get within 5 feet of you, you now have that mechanical, tactical spell. Mm-hmm. But if you just want to use it in sort of a role-playing sort of way, you can affect people. You can make them super greedy.
Yeah.
And whatever consequences of that. You could, if you're negotiating, you're trying to get a job from a merchant, and this other group is trying to as well. You cast that on the other group, and they start asking for too much money, and you get the job. It can be used as sort of that narrative spell as well.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons why I like it so much is because it's flexible. Mm-hmm. It's used in multiple situations.
Right.
You'll see that I always like spells in this game that can be used in multiple situations.
Yep.
Jim's Glowing Coin. I like this one. It's fun and good for starting a fight. It's basically a flash bomb.
Yeah.
So what you do is you cast it on a coin, and the coin lights up brightly, which gives everybody disadvantage against perception checks and gives advantage and disadvantage on initiative rolls.
Right. And I'll tell you, this is another one of those, let's make a spell that people try to do with other spells, right? At first level, new players, right, they can cast light.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're peeking into a room. There's a group of orcs in the room. They look at their character sheet. They're like, oh, I want to cast light to distract them, right? They always try that.
Yep.
And it's always then up to the DM, oh, how do I do this? What do I do? So what this is an actual way to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a same as a light spell, so you can use it that way. But you can also, if you're trying to stealth, you can use this, throw it in the room. If they fail their save, you have they have disadvantage on their perception checks to see you, and on their initiative rolls if you rush into the room.
Mm-hmm.
So it's useful in all of those ways.
Which makes it a pretty great spell.
Yep.
Jim's Magic Missile. So I like this a lot. So you actually throw three bolts of energy. You have to make a spell attack rolls with them. They each do 2d4 damage, and if you crit, they do 5d4 instead of doubling the dice. And if you roll a 1 on any of those attack rolls, it backfires and you take 3 force damage because the missiles blow up in your face.
Right.
There's nothing I don't like about that.
Yeah. This is for people who liked the 4th edition Magic Missile spell, where you actually had to make an attack roll, but you also could crit with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, and the reason we made it is when the very first games of Acquisitions Incorporated were 4th edition games. So when Jim Dark Magic cast Magic Missile, he had to make attack rolls.
Yep, and now it's called Jim's Magic Missile.
Yep. There you go.
And Motivational Speech is a pretty solid buff spell. It just, I forget, it gives people advantage on a number of things. I don't have it all written down. Do you remember?
Advantage on wisdom saving throws?
Yeah.
Temporary hit points?
Yep, and if you get hit, then the next attack that you make has advantage against that creature.
Yep. And it stays for 1 hour or for as long as you have those temporary hit points.
Correct.
So.
Good stuff. I like it.
Yep.
All right. The last thing is factions and rivals. These are just AI-specific groups, and each one of them gets a few paragraphs telling a bit about their place in the AI world. The AI paragraphs, I mean, the book is about this organization, so it's a lot of propaganda making them look good.
And it's not hard for them to look good in their own minds.
I suppose that's true. The Duran Enterprises, they seek the best AI at their own game, and they're also run by Omidron's sister Portentia these days. There's the Noble Knife. They assassinate tyrants, essentially. There's the Silver Sliver, which is a tongue twister, which Omen says, I don't know why your marketing would put you as a tongue twister. I also don't know why you don't charge for your services, because they're just a bunch of do-gooders that wear silver masks.
Yep.
And there's the Six, which are AI's equivalent to the Sinister Six, maybe, because maybe there's 6 of them, and they're just a bunch of former enemies of AI that keep coming back and banding together to cause trouble.
Yep. This is well, if you have watched Acquisitions Incorporated over the years, what Chris Perkins did in these games is brilliant, and a lot of these groups came from that. And they are useful even if you change the names in your campaign. Even if you're running a homebrew campaign, all of these are typical things that you can do to deepen a storyline while continuing an ongoing narrative. So with Drawn Enterprises, Chris worked with Jerry Holkins, who plays Omen Drawn, to come up with a backstory about different things that they were doing. And Omen's family was a big part of his life, and he lost a sister in a dungeon called the Wandering Crypt. So this whole storyline was he was searching for her. When he found her, she had created this whole other group to oppose Acquisitions Incorporated. So right there is, backstory, lost his sister. Now that I found her, she's an enemy. Boom, perfect.
Also, not his real sister.
Right. The Noble Knife.
Until she died, and then the real other sister showed up to take it over.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and then it moved forward from there. But
go read the book.
Yeah. The Noble Knife and the Silver Sliver are just these alternate groups. Acquisition Incorporated is not a lawful good organization, to say the least.
No, they're a lawful I want money group.
Right. They are more along the neutral to even further to the right or to the south of neutral.
Let's just call them what they are, lawful greedy. It's fine.
Yeah. And so, these good groups can be in the world and can be opposition in some ways. The Six, then, is people who Acquisitions Incorporated have wronged along the way, who have banded together to oppose them and try to bring them down. And all of these things they're typical things that you might create in your own home campaign, but just told by a really great DM, Chris Perkins, and a really great group of players.
So they're interesting in a lot of ways because they are not your typical. If you reskin them, just took off the skin and looked at them as what function they serve,
right?
They're different because a lot of these groups, the player characters would fit into in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. They could be normal player characters would be part of the Noble Knife or the Silver Sliver because those are the organizations that take down bad people.
Right.
In quotes, bad people.
Right.
So when you play an Acquisitions Incorporated game, you can play a game that is not about necessarily playing good people. You can play, but you're not necessarily playing evil people.
Right.
So you can have your non-good but yet not evil campaign, and these all fit inside of that pretty eloquently, actually.
Yeah. That was the plan.
Or efficiently, or
right.
Not
they fit a storytelling
elegantly, not eloquently.
Yeah.
Elegantly. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Well, it's eloquent as well, but yeah, they fit the trope, right? They fit the narrative paradigm that this game creates.
Yeah, concerning the fact you're playing the characters from a different trope, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They're good. I like them. It's fun. It's short. It's interesting. It's actually more interesting to me as a larger topic to explore than it is as what it is in the book. In the book, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
But the way that it is used and the kind of ideas that it brings up is pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, even if you're not running an AI game specifically, there are lessons to be learned by all of these.
True facts.
Yep. And even the playing with class section, it shows how to manipulate the standard story to have it fit into a different world. So you could just as easily take the office satire out, stick in some sort of jungle theme, and still say, oh, I see what they did with this subclass. I'm going to do that, but it's going to be this Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, ruined civilization sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Shawn, that's pretty much all the mechanical stuff in the book, because the next part of the book is an adventure.
True story.
We can talk about that if you want to. I don't know if we need to. And then after that, it's just appendix stuff about Acquisitions Incorporated.
Yeah, why don't we just cover the whole rest of the book in the next section?
Sure.
We can touch on the adventure without spoiling it. We can touch on the individual monsters or other things in the book.
Sure. So that's what we'll do, and that'll be our last episode on the AI book.
There you go.
All right, everybody, let's do some... thank you so much for listening. Let's do some Patreon shout-outs. Jen Pixelscapes Gagny, Joseph Peralta, Mike Amer, Ninjabi, The Rainmaker, Richard Ruane, Roy McLeod, Savannah Sizer, Scott Ryder, Sean P. Kelly, Steve Bissonette, Steve Redabaugh, The Tabletop Bellhop, Tad Leckman, T. Kustik, Theodore Atkinson, Thomas Bagley, Victor Wyatt, and Zach Coins. And speaking of patrons, if you'd like to be a patron of Down with D&D, you can click on the link to our Patreon page on the website, and for $2 a month, you can get yourself a shout-out like you just heard.
Yeah, or for $4 a month, you not only get a shout-out, you also get to see our show notes, and you get access to our Slack room, where you can chat with us wherever you want, or you can go to the forums.
Mm-hmm. If you can't help us monetarily, but you want to give us a boost, you can do so with an Apple Podcast review or a review anywhere, really.
Yep. Any of those places, Apple Podcast or any other podcatcher reviews, or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere, if you could just give us a review, tell us how you think we're doing, what you like, what you don't like, we would appreciate it. It helps make us more visible and broadens our reach in the D&D world.
If you like D&D, starting on September 30th, you can check out the FM Gamers on the new Misdirected Mark Twitch channel, twitch.tv/misdirectedmark, where we will be playing D&D. Shawn won't be playing, but I will be, with Jesse Edmonds, their editor of this show, and the host of the lounge, and some new cast members.
Sweet.
We'll be playing a game called Spelljammed, using the 5th edition D&D rules.
Nice.
Sean, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Sean Merwin or on those aforementioned forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com. How about you, Chris?
I'm at the Light 101, or if you want to, get a hold of the network in general, it's at Misdirected Mark on Twitter. You can also just go to the website where you can catch other great shows such as Bonus Experience, where Ray and Monica, these two wonderful old friends, they explore gameplay and design through the lens of diversity, while also sharing some of the dumbest humor gaming has to offer, and it's quite wonderful.
Down with D&D is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs.
So, Mr. Mad Wizard Merwin, who's maternal and melted, what are we going to do now?
We're going to go kill some monsters.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?